Hello everyone. In this lesson we'll be looking at three commonly used Sumif function variants. As it's obvious from the name sum, the function is meant to add together values in multiple cells or ranges. The sheet that you see in front of you shows the sunshine in hours, the rainfall in millimeters, and the wind speed in knots for two different areas, Murray and Kakan, for a period of two different months, March and April. We will start with the first basic variant of the sum function. This is the summary area where I'll type in the first function. The requirement over here is to display the total rainfall per month for these two different areas, and the values would be displayed against the entries for March and for April for both the areas. So I'll start with typing in the function by typing in the equal to sign first, and then start typing in the syntax of the function. Now, as soon as I type the first letter, a pop-up appears, as you can see in front of you, a drop-down, which lists all the different functions supported by Excel which start with the letter S. This feature comes in quite handy when you do not remember the exact syntax of the function that you wish to use. So you can type in as much as you remember, and you will notice that it will start narrowing down the results that are displayed in the drop-down. That would help you easily recall or identify the correct syntax of the function that you wish to use. Now, since I clearly remember the function that I need to use, I'm going to type it in completely. As soon as I've done that, it automatically jumps to the matching function name, and a pop-up appears on the right hand side which displays a description of the function as to what it's actually meant to be used for. This feature comes in handy when you want to be sure about what the purpose of that particular function is, or you could also use it to actually see or check the purpose of the different functions that are displayed in the drop down if you're not sure about which one you wish to use. Now, to provide the parameters, which are the values that need to be added together, I'm going to open the round brackets, and as soon as I do that, the drop down disappears and it is replaced with a pop-up that displays the format, the further detailed syntax of the function sum that I have typed, which reads number 1, comma, number 2, comma, and then ellipses. Now, this basic version of sum supports multiple parameters, multiple types of formats for the parameters that are input, which means that if, for example, I wanted to add values in different cells, like for example, this, and then comma, this, then comma, this, then comma, this, so I could do that, and then I type in the closing brackets and press enter, and it would have added together the values for those cells. This particular feature comes in handy when the values that you need to add together are not in consecutive cells. If the values are in consecutive cells, then that would be treated as a range. So we'd select it like this. But if there are more than one ranges, like there are some cells that you need to skip when selecting cells in a range, then you can do it like this: select the range, then type the comma, and then select the next range, and then type the comma, and then select the next range, and then close the brackets. Now here you can see there are three ranges: range 1, comma, range 2, comma, range 3, and then after that, when I type in the closing brackets and press enter, it would have added up the values in those three ranges. Now, I can definitely provide more than three ranges. This is just to give you an idea. Now, since in this particular case, the requirement is to basically add together the values for rainfall for this area for the period of March, so I'm going to start highlighting the range from this point to this point. And as soon as I'm done doing that, I'm going to type in the closing round brackets and then press enter. And as soon as I've done that, it has calculated and displayed a value over here, which is obviously the sum of the rainfall for the month of March for Murray. Now, as I had explained to you in a previous lesson, that we can copy down a formula to apply the same calculation for a different row. Here, it wouldn't work because here we are selecting a range, and the ranges that we are selecting are not actually in different rows, and they're not the same size. So I'll have to type it in manually again like this. So equal to sum, opening brackets, and then scroll down to C65 and highlight it till C92 and then closing brackets and press enter. So now I have the sum of rainfall for Murray for March and the sum of rainfall for Murray for the month of April. Now I can repeat the same process for the next area, which is Kahan, and I can copy the formula, but again copying it would not actually fulfill the requirement as per need in this particular case, because the columns value that we need to add together, they are not consecutive. This is the column for Murray and this is the column for Kahan. But I'm still going to copy that just to make my work a little more easier. I'm going to copy that over here, and you would notice that the range, which is from C34 to C64, has changed to D34 to D64, which is actually not right, but I'm just going to look at the correct column label from over here, and I'm just going to edit the formula over here and change the D to an F and then press enter. So I did actually reduce my work a little because the number of cells or the rows of cells that we needed to add together were the same for both Murray and Kahan, only the columns were different and they were not consecutive. So I could just change the columns later, hence cutting down on the work that I needed to do. So I'm going to repeat the same process over here in this particular case and then change this to F, because again the rows are the same, just the column is different, not consecutive. So this was the example of use of sum function. Sometimes we need to add values that are in a given range, but we don't need to add all of those values. We need to filter the values based on a criteria, which could apply on the values that are being added or could apply differently. Let's take a look at that version. The next summary required is total hours of sunshine per month on days with heavy rainfall. So this is sunshine and this is the rainfall column. So this means that I would need to select the range from here for the values that need to be added together, but I would need to apply a criteria that would check for the rainfall to see if it is considered as heavy rainfall, and only then would add the values from this particular column. So how do we do that? First of all, the function for that is, this time it's SUMIF and not sum. Equal to SUMIF. It says adds the cells specified by a given condition or criteria. So I'm going to open the brackets, the round brackets. Remember, for the functions we always use round brackets, other brackets would not work. So if you accidentally type in the wrong bracket, the function would not return the correct results. Now in the format, the syntax for the SUMIF function, you would notice there are three items mentioned: range, criteria, and sum range. Now the range over here refers to the column which contains the values that need to be evaluated to decide whether the value from that row from a different column needs to be added to the sum. So since we need to add the sunshine values for the days of the month where the rainfall was considered as heavy, so we would need to evaluate the values in this and then accordingly add the values from this column. So for the range part, I'm going to select this area till C64. I type in the comma, and then I have to type in the next parameter. Now the parameter is criteria. Criteria basically is the condition that I need to apply to implement this, which is heavy rainfall. Now heavy rainfall is normally interpreted as anything over 7.5 millimeters. So now, okay, these kind of things, they're normally mentioned in the exam paper, and they don't expect you to like know these from before somehow. So they do mention this sort of a thing in the examination. So to type in the criteria, which in this case would be that any value which is greater than 7.5 mm, I would have to type it in double quotes like this, and type this, which means greater than 7.5, and then double quotes, closing double quotes. So this is the criteria. So here what it's going to do is that it's going to check the values in this range and match it against this criteria to see if the value, each value is greater than 7.5. And if it is, then I'm going to type in the comma, and now I'm going to specify the sum range, which in this particular case is this column from B34 to B64. Now remember one thing which is very important in this particular case: the range that I highlight, the rows that I highlight must exactly match. I cannot have a different range of rows for the range and a different range of rows for the sum range. That is, the formula is not going to work properly if I do that. Normally it would give you an error. Okay. So closing brackets, press enter, and here we have this basically is the sum of the sunshine values where we had rainfall that exceeded 7.5. Okay. Now this was the version of sum to be used, a conditional sum, where we had a single criteria to evaluate before adding values together. Sometimes we need to specify more than one conditions, and those conditions actually apply on values in more than one columns. So let's look at the next scenario. I haven't actually completed this part. We'll come to that later. Let's come to this one, the next one, that says total hours of sunshine per month on windy days with heavy rainfall. Now, heavy rainfall was anything greater than 7.5 mm. Windy days normally are the ones which are more than 20 knots. Okay, more than 20 knots. So here, the criteria that I need to apply would be to check values in this column to see the values which are greater than 7.5, and then check the values in this column to see where for the same row the value is greater than 20, and then for the same row it would be adding values from this column. So we start the function like this, equal to Sumifs. Now this is the next one. Bracket open. Now here the syntax has changed a little. Here we have to specify the sum range first, and then the criteria range, and then the criteria, and then the next criteria range, and then the next criteria, and so onwards. So I'm going to specify the sum range first, which is from B34 to B64, and then comma. Now the next thing that I need to specify is criteria range 1. So I'm going to go for the windy days first. It doesn't matter which one I give first. I can actually do this one first or this one. It doesn't matter. I would actually be using both eventually. So I'm going to start with this one as the first criteria range. Select the same set of rows, but a different column obviously, and then comma, and then the criteria would be within double quotes greater than 20. Now remember, I'm just typing in the value. I'm not typing in anything else apart from that because it's a numerical value. So if I type something like knots or anything like that, it won't work because the values in the cells which are going to be evaluated are actually numbers. So I've specified the first criteria, and then I type in a comma, and then I select the next range, next criteria range, which is rainfall, and selecting the same rows for but a different column, and then comma, and then the next criteria, which is in this particular case within double quotes greater than 7.5, double quotes and then closing brackets. Now you notice that it is displaying another criteria range and then another criteria. So it does support more than 2 criteria which can be specified. Normally whenever we get a scenario, we get up to 2 maximum. But if you ever get more than 2 conditions, then in that case you can easily implement it using this particular format that I've just explained to you. So I'm going to type in the closing brackets and then press enter, and here I have the sum. Now you notice that the sum is different in this particular case as compared to the sum over here, because here we had only accommodated heavy rainfall, and here we've accommodated windy days as well as rainfall. So this means that it evaluated the values for the rainfall and the wind speed both before deciding whether the value in this cell would be added to the sum or not. So these were the 3 variants of the sum function.